So good afternoon, everybody. There's not many live, but I'm sure some people will join us. Otherwise, this will be on Facebook. I'm Catherine Ford. I'm one of the assistant principals, and one of my roles is to look after the students in the later years, and that includes looking after the VCE and VCAL programs. So this is a brief presentation to give parents information about the General Achievement Test, or the GAT, which all students in Unit 3 and 4 subjects actually need to complete this year. And we wouldn't normally do a GAT presentation like this, but this has been such an unusual year for students and for families that we thought it was important. Also, there are some variations to the GAT this year that aren't quite nutted out, but we think will potentially have an impact. So starting with the GAT this year is on Wednesday the 7th of October. It starts at 10 o'clock for students, and it's actually a 3-hour exam, and it goes until 1 p.m. We expect all students to get to school relatively early on that day. It would be useful if students were there by 9:30. It helps them, first of all, catch up with friends who they might not have seen for some time, but also helps them get a little bit settled rather than rushing in and coming late. So we're anticipating students would be on site by 9:30 for a 10 o'clock start for the exam. The GAT exam is traditionally used by VCAR to actually come up with a derived score. So it's there as a backup emergency plan for any students who, for whatever reason, have not been able to sit their exam. So a student who's sick on the day of the exam, or has a family incident or some ongoing illness issues that prevent them from doing the exams, VCAR would actually use their GAT score combined with their school assessed work to actually come up with a derived score, a derived study score for them. That would be the standard process this year. Because it's been such an unusual year, the GAT is going to be more important than it has before. We understand that VCAR is going to use students' GAT results as one piece of statistical information that they look at when they're developing a student's study score. So the student study score is not just an amalgamation of their exam results and their school assessed results. It actually has some other factors coming into it, and this year in particular it's going to have more factors. So it is a standardized score, which basically says where kids are ranked with every other student who's done that subject. So this year, because it's standardized, the GAT for the first time is actually going to be a piece of data that's used in there to actually help standardize that. So we've been really pushing the message with our students that this year the GAT is actually more important than it has ever been before. It's something that the kids really have to take seriously, and it's something that they have to think about and they actually have to prepare for. As a result, to assist students with doing that, today we've run an assembly with them where we've gone through and highlighted what the GAT is and what the expectations for the GAT are. We've shown them what some of the different types of questions they'll have to answer are. There's 3 components to a GAT task. So the kids have to do 2 writing tasks, which they have to write short essays. They get about 30 minutes to write each response, and then there's 70 multiple choice questions. So today we've shown them that. We've highlighted what the exam would look like and how to balance their time. In their English class this week, their teachers will also go through with them the expectations of the writing task in a bit more detail and give them a little bit of practice. We're also, to help the students prepare, we're also going to be giving them 2 printed off copies of the GAT to take home and have a look at over the holidays, and to have a bit of a practice on as well. Because it is important that they're prepared, they're able to try and balance the range of things they have to do in that and manage their time. So we want to give them that opportunity to prepare. I can see Lisa's there. Lisa, I think it's just you and me here today. So if you've got any questions, you can just pop them in the chat. So I suppose what we wanted to say to parents this year was we are doing everything we can to support the kids for the GAT, and to make sure that they're able to give it their best shot, and to really impress upon them the importance of it this year, more so than any other year. I mean, it is always important, but this year for students it is going to be more important. For those students who are in Year 11 doing a VCE Year 12 subject, they still have to do the GAT, so it's for all students doing a Unit 3 and 4 subject. Their English teachers won't be doing the practice tasks with them in class, but I'll be running a special session for Year 11 students tomorrow afternoon so they can make sure that they've got all the same information on how to approach the writing tasks. So to give you an idea of what it will look like for the students, the idea of the GAT is it assesses what kids have learned over their time in school. So students don't have to have specific knowledge in order to do it, but it is assessing their literacy skills, their numeracy skills, and their overall ability to reason and to think logically and to make inferences from materials. It will cover the whole range of the learning areas. So there will be questions that relate to interpretation of art. There will be questions that relate to numerical problem solving. There'll be some some responses where they've got to make inferences from some written text. So it covers the whole range of areas. It is something that kids can really prepare for by practicing. It's not something that they can study for. So they can't go off and study a whole bunch of science information to get their skills up for it. But what they can do is practice the multiple choice questions that are provided for them in their sample GATs. So we're going to be giving students 2 sample GATs printed out. They'll be printed so they look exactly like they do when they go to sit the GAT. And they'll get those on Friday. We're asking all the students to come up to the school to collect a revision package of materials that covers all their subjects that they're doing for the holiday period. So they'll have the opportunity to practice those over the holidays. And as I said, the teachers will go through with them the writing tasks. In the first week back next term, there are no students on site except for on the Wednesday of the day of the GAT. So they're the only students who will be on site is the Year 11s and 12s who have to sit the GAT. We've spent a lot of time planning around the COVID regulations. So the regulations allow us to run the GAT. We are running it, normally we just run it in the senior centre, but we're running it this year across a couple of different spaces to ensure the kids have got, each individual student has got a 4x4 square metres of space for that social isolation and social distancing. Students will of course all be required to wear a mask for the duration of the GAT, and all students will be temperature tested on entry. We will have hand hygiene stations set up in the venues for students as well, so they can actually make sure they keep their hands clean. So all those protocols that you would expect around COVID will be in place. The GAT finishes at 1 o'clock. We're going to be asking students to go directly home. I know in the state of current restrictions, there's actually not much else they can do but go home. But we're really asking for parents to encourage their kids to go straight home from the GAT and not to hang around the school or catch up with their mates, just because we are very conscious that those restrictions are all in place for students. So if anybody's got any questions, you can just pop them in the chat there. But if there's actually no questions, that's pretty much the information that I was hoping to convey to people this afternoon. So if that's that, I would like to thank you for joining us. For those of you who watch this later, I'd like to thank you for making the time to watch it. Once again, our message to the students is you've got this, you've had a good education at Wantirna College, you should be able to perform well on the GAT. You don't need any specific information, but you do need to think about what types of questions there will be to be prepared for them and to do some prep work around that. So again, thank you very much for joining us live. Thank you very much for those of you who watch later. Keep safe and stay well. Thanks. Bye.